The way she looked at me made my heart race, and I didn't understand why, not at first. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't even a smile. It was something quieter than that, something that landed and stayed. I was 3 weeks into my new job at the repair shop on 5th, still learning where everything went, still wiping grease off my hands like it might give me away. The bell above the door rang sometime after noon, a thin sound that usually meant another cracked phone screen or a laptop that had just stopped working. I didn't look up right away. I was bent over a counter, pretending I knew what I was doing. When I did look up, she was already there. Mid-40s, maybe a little older. Her coat was draped over one arm, like she'd meant to stay only a minute and changed her mind. She stood with her weight settled into one hip, calm in a way that made the rest of the room feel rushed. Her hair, dark, threaded with gray she didn't bother hiding, fell forward as she glanced at the shelves, then at me. She didn't rush her eyes. She let them arrive. "I'm sorry," I said too quickly. "I'll be right with you." She nodded once. No impatience, just a small acknowledgement, like she understood waiting. When I finally stepped around the counter, I wiped my hands on a rag that was already doing its best and failing. "What can I help you with?" She slid her phone toward me. The screen was spidered, but it still worked. "It's not broken," she said. "I just don't trust it like this." Her voice was steady low. She watched me as I picked it up, not my hands, my face. I felt it, the attention, like a light turned on without warning. I started explaining the repair, talking more than necessary, filling the space. She listened without interrupting, her mouth set in a line that wasn't quite serious. "How long?" she asked. "An hour. Maybe less." She glanced at the street through the window, then back at me. "I'll wait." There was a bench near the door. She sat, crossed her ankles, folded her coat neatly on her lap. I went back to the counter, but the room had changed. The hum of the lights felt louder. The clock above the register ticked like it was trying to be heard. Halfway through, I realized I was being careful in a way I usually wasn't. Slowing down, double-checking. Once, I looked up without meaning to. She was watching me, not staring, not smiling, just present. When our eyes met, she didn't look away right away. Neither did I. It was an extra beat. Maybe two. "Sorry," I said, though I didn't know why. She tilted her head. "For what?" I shrugged. The words didn't line up. She smiled then, not wide, just enough to change her face. Something in my chest tightened, like I'd stepped too close to a ledge. When the phone was done, I set it on the counter and slid it back to her. Our fingers brushed. It was nothing. It was everything. I pulled my hand back too fast, knocked the rag to the floor. She reached down at the same time I did. We laughed, soft, surprised, and our heads nearly touched. "Thank you," she said, standing. "You were very thorough." I watched her put on her coat, the way she took her time with it. At the door, she paused, hand on the handle. She looked back at me, really looked this time, like she was considering something she hadn't planned for. "See you," she said. The bell rang again as she left. The shop went quiet. An hour later, I was still standing there, replaying the way she'd said it, like it wasn't a goodbye at all. She came back on a Thursday, late afternoon, when the shop usually slowed into that restless quiet where nothing happened, but you still couldn't relax. I noticed the bell this time. I noticed everything. She didn't have her coat on, just a thin sweater, sleeves pushed up to her forearms. I saw her hands first. Long fingers. A faint nick on one knuckle, like she'd scraped it opening something stubborn. She held her phone loosely, not broken now, just there. "I hope this isn't weird," she said, standing at the counter instead of the bench. "It's still working fine. I just wanted to ask you something." "No," I said too fast, then corrected myself. No, it's not weird." She smiled, but it didn't stay. It passed through her face like a shadow of something she used to do more easily. She leaned closer, lowering her voice even though we were alone. "Sometimes it freezes when I open my email. I don't know if that's..." She stopped, pressed her lips together. "Sorry, this is probably a stupid question." "It's not," I said. I reached for the phone, hesitated. "May I?" She nodded. Our fingers didn't touch this time. I felt the absence of it. I showed her a setting she'd never notice on her own. She watched carefully, brow furrowed, like she didn't want to miss anything. "Up close," I could see how tired she looked. Not exhausted, just worn in a quiet way. Like someone who carried more than she talked about. "Do you do this all day?" she asked. "Yeah, mostly." I shrugged. "It's fine." She gave a soft laugh at that. Not disbelief. Recognition. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the lights filled the space again. I became aware of how close she was, how her sleeve brushed the counter near my wrist. She shifted slightly, like she'd realized it too. "I used to be good with this stuff," she said suddenly. "Technology, I mean." She looked at the phone, not me. Somewhere along the way, I started feeling behind. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't rush it. "You're not," I said finally. "You just haven't had someone show you." She looked up then. Really looked. There was something exposed in her eyes, like I'd named something she'd been trying to ignore. She inhaled, slow, steadying herself. "That's kind of you," she said. Her voice wasn't guarded now, just careful. Someone passed by outside, laughter trailing in through the glass. She stepped back a half step, like she remembered where she was, who she was supposed to be. "I should go," she said, already reaching for her phone. "Anytime," I said. "If it freezes again. Or whatever." She paused, phone in hand. Her thumb hovered over the screen like she was considering calling someone and deciding not to. "Thank you," she said. Then, quieter, "for not making me feel stupid." When she turned to leave, she hesitated at the door the same way she had before. This time, she didn't look back right away. When she did, her expression was softer, almost unsure. And just before the bell rang, she said, "You notice things." It wasn't a question. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She came in after closing. I know that because the lights were already dimmed, the register drawer open while I counted bills I didn't care about. Outside, the sky had turned that dull gray that meant rain was deciding whether to commit. The bell rang anyway, soft, apologetic, like it knew it wasn't supposed to. "I'm sorry," she said immediately, standing just inside the door. Her hair was damp, darker at the ends. "I know you're probably done." I should have said yes. I should have pointed at the hours taped to the glass and smiled the way I'd practiced. Instead, I glanced at the empty shop, then at her hands clasped around her phone like she was holding on to something fragile. "It's okay," I said. I was still here. She exhaled, a little laugh slipping out like it hadn't asked permission. "Good." The rain started then, hard, sudden, the kind that made the streetlights blur. She looked back at it, then at me, and shrugged out of her jacket. She didn't sit on the bench this time. She leaned against the counter, closer than before. Close enough that I could smell rain and something clean underneath it. "It's not the phone," she said. "I just needed to get out of my apartment." I nodded, like that made sense. Like I didn't want to ask why. We stood there for a moment, the rain filling the silence for us. I noticed the way she rubbed her thumb against the edge of the counter, back and forth, back and forth. A nervous habit. The first time I'd seen one from her. "My ex called," she said suddenly, then stopped, like she hadn't meant to say it out loud. "Oh," I said. "Brilliant." She smiled at that, not amused, just tired. "We haven't spoken in months. He does this thing where he remembers me when it's convenient." She looked down. I didn't answer. Her phone buzzed on the counter between us, like it had heard its name. She flinched. I didn't look at the screen, but I didn't have to. "You don't have to." I started, then stopped. It wasn't my place. None of this was. She turned the phone face down anyway. "I know." The lights flickered once. She glanced up, then back at me. Our eyes held longer than they should have. I felt the urge to say something reckless, something honest. I swallowed it. "You're young," she said softly, like it was an observation she'd been circling for a while. "You probably think I have everything figured out." I almost laughed. "No," I said. "I don't." She studied my face, like she was checking for sarcasm and not finding any. Her shoulders dropped a fraction, just enough to notice. "Good," she said. "Because I don't." The rain eased. The shop felt too quiet without it. I became aware of how close she was again, closer now. Her hand rested on the counter, palm up. Without thinking, I reached for the phone, slid it a few inches away so it wouldn't buzz again. Our fingers brushed. This time, neither of us moved right away. I could have closed the distance. I felt it, the possibility, hovering there between us. Instead, I pulled my hand back slowly, deliberately, like proving something to myself. She noticed. Of course she did. "Thank you," she said, not looking at me. She picked up her jacket, paused, then leaned in. Not enough to touch, just enough that her voice dropped. "Don't make me regret coming in tonight." I watched her leave without answering, my hand still warm where she almost hadn't let go. She didn't come back for a week. I told myself that was normal. People got their phones fixed and moved on. Shops were just stops along the way. Still, every time the bell rang, my shoulders lifted before I could stop them. Every time it wasn't her, something in me settled wrong. When she finally did come in, it was early. Morning light, too honest. She stood just inside the door like she wasn't sure she was allowed to be there anymore. "I don't need anything," she said before I could speak. I nodded once. "Okay." She didn't move. Neither did I. The space between us felt louder than the shop ever did at closing. "I've been thinking," she said, then stopped. Pressed her lips together. Started again. "About last time." "Me too," I said. It slipped out. Her eyes lifted to mine. That same steady gaze, but something behind it was unsteady now. She came closer, not all the way to the counter. Close enough that we couldn't pretend this was just business. "This isn't normal," she said quietly. "Is it?" I looked down at my hands. They were clean for once. "Useless." "No." She let out a breath that sounded like relief and disappointment tangled together. "Good." Because I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. We stood there, the truth sitting between us like something fragile. I wanted to reach for it. I didn't know how. "I notice when you don't come in," I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. "And I don't think I should." That got a reaction. She flinched, not away, but inward. "You shouldn't," she agreed. "And I shouldn't notice how you look at me when I talk too much. Or how you stop touching things when I'm close." I swallowed. The air felt thin. "I'm not trying to," I started. "I know," she said quickly. Then softer. "That's the problem." She leaned against the counter, fingertips resting on the edge like she needed the support. Up close, I could see the lines at the corners of her eyes. Not flaws. Evidence. "I've spent a long time being careful," she said. "Making choices that make sense. And then I come in here, and suddenly I'm counting days. That scares me." I didn't say that I was counting minutes. I didn't say her voice stayed with me after she left. I just listened. That felt safer. She looked at me then, really looked, like she was memorizing something she might have to give up. Her gaze dropped to my mouth, then snapped back to my eyes, like she'd caught herself doing something dangerous. "We need to decide what this is," she said, "or what it isn't." The shop was quiet. No bell, no rain, just us and the truth we'd been avoiding. I took a step back, not because I wanted distance, but because I needed to breathe. "I don't want to be something that makes you feel reckless." Her mouth trembled, just a little. "And I don't want to be something you mistake for a phase." We stood there, facing each other, neither reaching out. The tension wasn't in our hands anymore. It was in what we were refusing to say. Finally, she straightened, picked up her phone, and held it to her chest like a shield. "Tell me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "how to walk away from something that hasn't even happened yet." She didn't leave town. She didn't disappear. But something shifted after that morning, like the ground had tilted just enough that walking straight felt harder. It was late again when it happened. Not closing time, but close enough that the shop felt half asleep. I was in the back, sorting parts I'd already sorted twice, when I heard her voice say my name. Not loud, not careful, just familiar. She was holding her phone out, the screen dark. "Can you listen to something?" she asked. "You don't have to. Can you?" I nodded. Words felt unreliable lately. She tapped the screen and set the phone on the counter between us, like last time. A voicemail began to play. A man's voice, older than mine. Calm, measured. The kind of voice that sounded like it had always known where it belonged. "Hey, it's me. I know you said not to call, but I was cleaning today. Found that photo. You know the one. I just wanted you to know I still think about you. Every day. I hope you're okay." She reached over and stopped it before it finished. "I didn't delete it," she said. Not apologizing. Just stating a fact. I don't know why. I waited. The hum of the lights filled in the space where I didn't interrupt. "He died," she said. 2 years ago. The words landed quietly. No build-up. No warning. Just truth. We were together a long time ago, she went on. Wrong timing. Always that. We kept finding each other when we weren't supposed to. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then one day, there was no more time. I felt something shift in my chest. Not jealousy. Something heavier. Like understanding without permission. She pulled a photo from her wallet and set it down. Her, younger. Him beside her. His arm around her shoulders. Her smile was unguarded in a way I hadn't seen before. You look at me the way he used to, she said softly. Like you're trying to read what I won't say. I wanted to deny it. I didn't. That's not fair to you, she added quickly. I know that. I'm not asking you to be anything like him. I'm not trying to be, I said. My voice came out rougher than I meant. I know. She watched my face, every reaction. That's what scares me. She gathered the photo, slid it back into her wallet with care. Her hands shook, not much, but enough. I reached out without thinking and steadied them. Just for a second. She didn't pull away. I don't miss him the way people expect, she said. I miss who I was when I believed I still had time. The shop felt very small then. Too small for all of it. I let my hand fall back to my side. Slowly, deliberately. She took a breath, like she was bracing herself for something that hadn't happened yet. Then she looked at me, eyes clear and unprotected. You make me feel like I'm standing at the edge of something again, she said. And I don't know if I'm brave enough to step, or wise enough not to. She turned toward the door, paused with her hand on the handle. I didn't plan for you, she said. That's the truth. The bell rang as she left. I stood there, staring at the space where she'd been, realizing the danger wasn't that I reminded her of someone she lost. It was that I made her imagine who she could still become. She came back when the shop was empty in the way that felt intentional. Not late. Not early. Just a time where nothing else was asking for her. I was fixing a radio behind the counter, one of the old ones no one ever really wanted repaired, just kept around because throwing it away felt worse. I heard the bell and didn't jump this time. I knew it was her before I looked up. I don't know how. I just did. She didn't speak right away. She stood there, hands tucked into her coat pockets, shoulders slightly rounded like she was tired of holding herself upright. I don't want to keep pretending this is accidental, she said finally. I set the radio down, turned it off. The silence that followed felt deliberate, like we'd both agreed to it without saying so. Okay, I said. She walked closer, stopping on the other side of the counter. Not leaning, not retreating, just there. I'm not confused anymore, she said. I'm scared. There's a difference. I nodded. My chest felt tight, but steady. Me too. That surprised her. I could tell. She studied my face, like she was checking for cracks. You're not supposed to be, she said softly. I know, I said. But I am. She let out a breath that sounded like something giving way, not collapsing, just loosening. She reached up and rubbed at her temple, eyes closed for a moment. I don't want to hurt you, she said, or use you as proof that I'm still capable of this. You're not, I said. I don't feel like that. She opened her eyes. What do you feel like? I thought about it. About the nights she wasn't there. About the way I listened for the bell without meaning to. About how careful I'd been, and how little that had protected either of us. Like I'm choosing this, I said, not falling into it. That was the moment. I saw it in her face, the shift from resistance to recognition. Not relief, not surrender, just truth. She came around the counter slowly, giving me time to step back if I wanted to. I didn't. She stopped close enough that our shoes almost touched. I don't need promises, she said. And I don't want to pretend this fixes anything. It doesn't, I said. But it's real. She reached out then. Not to my face. Not to pull me closer. Just her hand, resting over mine where it sat uselessly at my side. Her fingers were warm. Steady. We stayed like that for a long moment. No rush. No words trying to turn into something bigger than they were. She leaned her forehead lightly against my shoulder. Just the weight of it. Just enough. Stay, she said. Not as a command. Not as a plea. Just a fact spoken out loud. I did. Outside, traffic moved. Somewhere a phone rang and stopped. Inside the shop, nothing changed, and everything had. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. We sat on the bench by the door, shoulders touching, hands still linked, letting the quiet hold us the way we'd been holding ourselves apart. For the first time since I'd met her, there was nothing left to decide. Only whether we were willing to remain where we were. And we were. I'm telling this from some distance now, not because it ended badly, but because time changed the way it lives inside me. What we didn't do that day mattered just as much as what we did. We didn't rush. We didn't rename ourselves into something safer or louder. We let it be quiet. And somehow, that was the bravest thing either of us had done in a long time. She still comes by the shop. Not every week. Not on a schedule. Sometimes it's for something real, a cable, a setting she forgot again. Sometimes it's just because she was already nearby and didn't want to pretend she wasn't. She laughs more easily now. Not the polite kind. The kind that surprises her. I notice she stands differently too. Less braced. Like she stopped expecting the floor to shift under her feet. As for me, I learned the difference between wanting and choosing. Before her, I thought intensity meant depth. I thought if my heart raced, that meant I was close to something true. She taught me that real connection doesn't always speed you up. Sometimes it steadies you. Sometimes it asks you to wait, to listen, to stay even when there's no guarantee waiting will be rewarded. We never made promises we couldn't keep. That mattered to her. It mattered to me, too, even if I didn't know it yet. We agreed on something quieter, honesty in the moment. If one of us needed space, we said it. If something felt heavy, we didn't pretend it wasn't there. It wasn't perfect. We misread each other sometimes. We went quiet when we shouldn't have. But we always came back to the same bench by the door, the same shared pause, like a reset button we both trusted. Love, I learned, isn't always fireworks or declarations. Sometimes it's showing up without armor. Sometimes it's letting yourself be seen by someone who knows exactly where to look, and choosing not to look away. She once told me she stopped measuring her life in what she'd lost. Not because it stopped hurting, but because it stopped being the only story she believed. I didn't save her from anything. I just stood close enough that she could remember herself. And she did the same for me, in ways I'm still discovering. I don't know what happens next. I'm okay with that now. What we have isn't defined by where it's going, but by how it feels when we're in it. Grounded, imperfect, real. Sometimes, when the shop is quiet and the light slants just right through the front window, I catch myself waiting for the bell. Not with urgency, with trust. And when it rings, I look up, ready for whatever walks through the door. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?